almost there. After all the hours we've worked, one more can make us legends. After all.
Good morning and welcome to The Last Word. Of course, I am your host, Jeff Barnes, along with my co-host, Brock Vieira. And sitting in for Joe again, we have Greg. Back in the house. How are you guys feeling today?
Doing real good.
Yeah, feeling great.
Man, rivalry week did not disappoint. It's been very disappointing for me as Thanksgiving Day, my alma mater, and Coach Mario Valentini's final game after a great 40-year run at Mount St. Michael, lost again to Cardinal Hayes, and then to turn around and have my beloved Grambling Tigers lose to Southern. I'm an 0 for 2 this weekend. I'm a little tired of rivalry week right now. But how about you guys?
For me, rivalry week lived up to its billing. Right, we had some really, really great games yesterday.
Yeah,
and Friday.
yeah. You know, for me, you can put 0-3 because my UNLV Rebels lost to San Jose State pretty bad yesterday. Fortunately, we already took care of our rivalries beforehand, already securing the victors against Hawaii and Nevada. So we'll see what happens next. But just a great slate of games yesterday. Whether you had an interest in them or not, so much great football was played, and some really interesting storylines have been developed out of the results from yesterday.
Yeah.
Shout out to Coach Alonzo Carter there over at Jose State. So I'm going to go to the scoreboard. We're going to talk about an extra game that's not part of our normal five, but has some merit to talk about. So getting into the scoreboard real quick. Of course, Georgia knocks off Georgia Tech. It wasn't a real battle in Georgia, but it was entertaining enough. Notre Dame all over Stanford in the rivalry there. It's probably, I don't know if that wouldn't last after this year. We'll see. Iowa State knocks off Kansas 42-35. USF. And people are going to go, why is USF and UCF winning? Well, I'm going to tell you why. USF all over Charlotte 48-14. UCF 27-13 over Houston. Why are those two games on here? Because both of those teams are going bowling. UCF in their first Big 12 season going bowling. USF, who had a combined 3 wins the last 2 years, going bowling in the first year on the Great Course. So, congrats to them. Clemson quietly rebounded from 4-4 to go 8-4.
Oh, what a day! Holy fuck! Greg, what a day! What a day!
So, 16-7. We're going to talk about, of course, Oklahoma State. 34. Arizona, all over Arizona State, 59-23. And, of course, LSU top 42-30. But the game you guys really wanted to dig into was the Battle of Kentucky. Kentucky, Louisville. Louisville, of course, the favorites. And man, oh man, what happened there?
They got ran on. Kentucky just smoked them. I mean, that's the bottom line. Louisville's defense did not show up.
Yeah, you kind of knocked it right out of the park with that. Kentucky has been able to run the football on their opponents throughout the season. You all remember Ray Davis's huge game, I believe, to open up conference play in the SEC, and they just kind of carried that into throughout the season. Kentucky this year has been a bit disappointing, especially with Missouri's rise in the SEC East. So for them to kind of end their regular season on such a high note is beneficial to them. I thought they're going to lay an egg. I felt that Mark Stoops already had one foot out the door to Texas A&M, which we're now learning that might no longer be the case. With that being said, Kentucky played strong. I expected a lot more from Devin Leary this season. We didn't really see that, and that was a little bit disappointing. But once again, when they need to put it together, they did. For Louisville, it eliminates them from college football playoff contention. However, they can still play spoiler as they're competing for the ACC title next week against Florida State. Just really well done, Kentucky. and a bit of a letdown for a bunch of Louisville fans who have been so close to putting their hands on a national title, yet always seem to fumble a critical game away that they should have won. This is the case today, but hey, that's guess how the cookie crumbles.
Yeah, definitely. Louisville just didn't show up the way that they did against the Notre Dames and everybody else that they beat this year. It was surprising, but that's rivalry week.
And when we talk about Louisville, we said, well, like a score, right? Well, they did just that. They scored over 30. Problem is, you couldn't stop anybody. And that's something that's a little different, right? Because we see when they beat Notre Dame, the defense showed up. We see when they've had other wins, the defense showed up, including some big ones. So where did all of a sudden they learn not to stop anybody? Well, listen, Kentucky's a tough matchup, no doubt about it. Their running game is superb. They're a gritty team. They're a blue-collar team that's going to come out and grind it out versus you. But they were able to move the ball in some crucial situations in the air as well. So something happened with this team. They figured out something with Louisville. They were able to attack in key situations through the air, but most importantly, maintain their ground superiority. So kudos to Kentucky and Coach Stoops for finding a way to go out there and knock off one of the toughest teams in the top 25.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to slide into our Premier 5. They're going to slide into the back end of it because we're going to leave the big games for last because we want to keep it. We're going to keep it, right? So we're going to start off. We're going to slide a little east and go Battle of the Carolinas. That's right. North Carolina to be exact. NC State, UNC, and it was NC State all over them. And we have to talk about this because you notice we put up a lot of stats going some of these matchups. Well, this is one particular thing we really need to focus on here because this is a guy we talked about as a Heisman candidate. Well, here's a game that's big for you because you don't have any conference title aspirations at this point. In-state rivalry, you at least want to win this one. 3 turnovers that led to your loss. So we always talk about Drake May in the draft, Drake May in the Heisman race. Well, Drake May has underwhelmed these last 4 games. Can we say that?
Yeah.
Oh, easily.
You really got it. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jeff.
No. I was just going to lead into another. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, you really got to question the mental fortitude of Drake May and this North Carolina coaching staff because it seems that ever since they lost to Virginia, a game in which they clearly should not have lost, and they've just been out of sorts and haven't been able to truly recover. Alongside that, Mac Brown's record against NC State since he became the head coach at North Carolina for the second time hasn't really been impressive. It's kind of been abysmal. I mean, I remember watching this game a couple years ago at Sam Howell and thinking that, they got big time Sam. They're going to take care of business. They had a really great running back room that year. I think Ty Chandler was the running back who put up a 1,000-yard season. It was going to be perfect. And they laid another egg again. So, we were so hyped on this North Carolina team coming into the season. And then I don't exactly want to blame him, but I feel like once Tez Walker got cleared by the NCAA, North Carolina just wasn't the same for whatever reason. And it showed yesterday in this big time rivalry matchup, and that's why they sputtered till the end. And that's how I feel about it.
What about you, Greg?
NC State is just loaded for bear when it comes to the Tar Heels. I mean, they did it to them last year. And they did it again yesterday. Bottom line is you cannot take a weaker opponent, so-called weaker opponent, lightly come rivalry week, which we'll discuss a lot more a little bit later. NC State, the Wolfpack, are geared to attack the Tar Heels, bottom line. And that's what they did. They just attacked them, and they were all over them the entire game.
Yeah, shout out to NC State coaching staff. They've done a quiet but well done job throughout the season.
Yeah, listen, NC State, they're a tough match. Look, we've seen it time and time again, week after week. They don't go easy. However, if you're the team that you're supposed to be, you're supposed to, we talk about North Carolina, okay? We've seen you go out there, you had the tough losses, but you want a rebound. We haven't seen a rebound, right? We've seen them beat some weaker opponents, yes, but I don't consider NC State that weaker opponent. Yet record-wise, yes, they're weaker. But when you watch their film, they're not a weak opponent. Some teams are just better than their record. They just don't have the wins to match how good they really are. And NC State, while they don't have this overwhelming offense, although you wouldn't recognize it from yesterday with the 39 points they put up on North Carolina, their defense was what carried them most of the season. You knew that you were coming into this game against the defense that took the ball away, the defense that was going to be physical, the defense that was going to make it hard on you to go on long drives. You may get a big play here and there, but getting long drive after long drive after long drive is not something NC State has done all year. They don't give that kind of offense up all the time. They don't give up big numbers offensively like that all the time. So if you're North Carolina, you're going into a grinded out kind of game where you're going to have to dog fight this one out. You can't turn the ball over. 3 turnovers by Drake May, right? You can't go out there and struggle on third down. They did. Okay, so there's a lot that North Carolina did in this game to lose this game. And you have to look at it and go, where do we go from this? Because you're going to go into a bowl game. You're 8-4, you're going to a bowl game no matter what, right? You're going to go to a bowl game. You got to come out there next year and try and compete for the ACC, what's left of it. So you got to find a way, right? So you're probably not going to have Drake May. He's probably running away from you. Where do you go from next year with this, right? Can you fix this defense? Are you getting the talent to fix this defense? Is your offense going to be anywhere near what it was this year? And listen, Wes Walker, this is it. Like, there's no more extensions. There's no more anything, right? So you're going to have to find a young talent. That's the beauty of coaching college football and high school football is the turnover is real. Yeah, every game, every level of football has turnover, but nothing like college and in high school. There is no signing a free agent. It is what it is. This is who your team is. If you recruited well, if you were able in the transfer portal and out of high school, you've been building up your program. The next level of guys are there. If not, boy, oh boy, you got some work to do with coaching up the guys you got. You just can't bring somebody in that easily.
Mac Brown has a lot of work to do in the transfer portal. Bottom line,
Indeed,
it's going to be a bit of a nightmare for the Tar Heels.
Well, speaking of nightmares, we're going to slide down 95, okay, and then over I-10, over to Gainesville, over here on the 75, my favorite of the state. We're going to slide into the state of Florida. We have an in-state rivalry there. We're talking about FSU versus Florida. And closer game than people expected, but we got some talking to do about those undefeated Noles. Boy, oh boy, they survive another matchup. All right, so they win. But 134 total passing yards. Is that going to be enough? This team's going to the ACC championship. They may win that. May. I'm not saying they are. They may win that. They win the ACC title. How does this team compete in the playoff with this passing game?
They don't.
They
don't. I mean, Jordan Travis not being there it was so obvious the drop down in quality of quarterback play that it wasn't even funny. The Seminoles will have to compete with their defense, but that's the bottom line. Jared Verse and those boys are going to have to step up and cause short fields because obviously they can't throw the football with the backup anywhere near what they were doing with Jordan Travis. Just that injury just devastated their chances.
Oh, sorry, Greg.
I'm just saying that injury just devastated Florida State's chances.
Yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Go ahead, bro.
I'm not trying to sound rude or insulting or condescending, but you should be able to at least manufacture 150 total yards from this Florida State offense, regardless of who your quarterback is, just based off not only the talent that Florida State has, but the massive deficiencies in talent Florida's defense has. Any ball that was thrown over 20 yards resulted in a Florida DB grabbing at somebody. It wasn't even funny. I don't remember his name, but I remember that the kid with dreads on Florida State was like getting called for a defensive pass interference. It felt like every third play. You know, you gotta question one, they're not gonna be able to compete in the playoffs. But two, if they can't even put together a convincing performance against Louisville and win, is the committee even going to allow them to get in? I don't think that they should be left out if they go undefeated, but we also know there's a lot more of these various factors that go into the committee's decision. Florida is a team that's not going to a bowl game this year, and that's after having what, like, two layup games, non-conference layup games. After the Utah game, I think they had like two layup, one against Charlotte, one against something else, and they beat Tennessee too. So they even was able to steal an SEC game, and they're still not bowl eligible. That has to raise some major concerns if you're a Seminoles fan, because had Jordan Travis been on this field, they probably would have beaten them like 56-28, like easily. And the fact that you had at least a 50% decrease in points, I don't really know what to say positively about this Florida State program.
Yeah, Mike Norvell's done a good job with this program. However, okay, one of the hardest things you have to do in coaching is learning how to coach what you have, right? Jordan Travis made it so much easier, right? You had to find a way to make the game plan easier for this young man, okay, where he could go out there and perform to the best of his ability. You had to call an offense to his strength. You can't do the same stuff. And if you look on the other sideline at the University of Florida, okay, with Graham Mertz at quarterback, that's part of the problem. That's the reason why that team isn't going to a bowl, okay, because that coach couldn't figure out the difference between Graham Mertz and his previous quarterback. And he's still calling plays in that offense the same way that he was calling it for Richardson, okay? Richardson's in Indianapolis, right? He's not in Gainesville, okay? Graham Mertz is the play-action passer. You needed to run the ball, work the control passing game, work off the play action, and he didn't do that. What he does in Florida is why they're in the situation they're in. Well, yesterday, you didn't find a way to make this kid relevant. So you skated by Florida. Kudos. You skated by. You can't skate by next week. All right. So Mike Norvell's got to figure some stuff out, because if you lose next week, there ain't no playoffs in the future. Enjoy a nice New Year's Day bowl, because that's it. You're not getting in with one loss. All right. If you had Jordan Travis, you could get in with him, but you're not. Okay.
But to only have 134, to only get 134 yards passing with Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson as your wide receivers, there was something seriously wrong with that game plan.
Yeah. They were obviously, if you looked at it, it was a very conservative game. They were worried about him throwing the ball too many times. And if that's the case, then why is he on your roster? Okay. So once again, if you can't coach the guys you have, and if that's the only coaching job you can do, you're not a playoff team. You're not going into the playoffs and winning that way. You're going to get smoked. Okay, you're going to be a number 4 seed. You're going to get Georgia first, who's going to dispatch you easily. All right, so that's not going to work. You got to find a way to make this kid relevant, just like Bama did with Jalen Milroe. Remember, he was struggling all early in the season. They found a way to get him comfortable, make him relevant. Now look at him now. We'll talk about Jalen Milroe in that matchup coming up after the break. But definitely, if you're Florida State, you have one more opportunity to prove to this playoff council that you can get in. Okay, and you have to do it versus Louisville, who's going to score points. If you can't go out there and match and top their ice, you're going home.
Well, and the kid that was in for Florida State yesterday was Norvell's first recruit. He was his number one recruit 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So what's happened in these 3 years that you can't trust him to throw the football? That made no sense.
It's insane. It's insane. Sometimes we say, right, every 5-star recruit is not a 5-star recruit. I'm sorry.
No.
I high school football. I watched how some of these kids are ranked. There are a lot of kids undervalued coming out of different places. And my county here in Pasco, in Florida, highly underrated. We have one prospect right now. Everybody's got a 5-star. There's a lot more with at least 3 and 4 stars that people aren't looking at. So I'll tell you that right now. Okay, people have to pay attention and really do their due diligence when recruiting. And stop listening to these national guys that tell you these are the guys you want. They don't know crap. They don't get on the road. All they do is go around and scout helmets. All right, go out there and do your own recruiting. You'll find the people you need. Okay, if this is the best you got out of 3 years, you should have transferred this kid out of there or got somebody in there to challenge him, because all it was one injury away from this kid playing. And you're saying now you're worried. They're very worried about their passing game. They're very worried about mistakes being made in the passing game. And that's why they're so conservative yesterday. Like I said, that works for Florida. It's not going to work for Louisville, and it's definitely not going to work. You got to score points.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to add that if this kid was recruited 3 years ago, Norvell brought in Mackenzie Milton last year just to show you guys how much faith that he has in this kid. You know what I mean? So that's not really promise. Another thing that's not really promising for Florida State fans is that last year he was QB3, and QB2 was a guy whose leg was too severely messed up to the point they didn't think he could walk again, let alone play again.
Yeah. So we're gonna take a quick break. We're gonna come back with this Iron Bowl, this Michigan, Ohio State. There's a battle for Washington. 3 premier matchups to talk about right after this break. We're back with more of the last word. Everybody stay tuned. Right.
In 2006, we founded Yeti Coolers with a simple mission: build the cooler we use every day if it existed. One that was built for the serious outdoor enthusiast rather than for mass discount retailers. One that could take the abuse we knew we'd put it through, out in the field and on the water. One that simply wouldn't break. We decided early on that production innovation would come from necessity and first-hand experience, not from market research and data analysis. Today, Yeti products perform when it matters most. Whether that be an excursion into the remote Alaskan wilderness, chasing redfish on the Gulf Coast, or just getting together with friends in the backyard, we make gear that helps you stay out longer, travel farther, and live harder. # built for the wild.
You are watching The Last Word with Team NBS Media. And now back to Joe, Jeff, and Brock.
Welcome back. Of course, Jeff, Brock, and of course, Greg sitting in for Joe today. And you're going to see Greg. He's going to be with me on Moving the Chains right after this. So make sure you stay tuned for NFL talk right after this show. So, guys, we're going to get into the premier matchups of this week. And you do realize we're basically down to one more show. Next week, conference week. That's it. College season's over, just like that. Man, it's been a ride so far. So, we're going to jump into the Battle of Washington. And then we're going to get into the Iron Bowl. And then we'll talk that big matchup. Is that all right with you guys?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Here we go. All right. So, Not on Washington. What can you say? You know, it looked for a while like Washington was going to fall. This was going to be the one loss. They managed to pull it out. I'll tell you what, it wasn't a special performance by Michael Penix at all, but it was good enough. This defense managed to make some opportunistic stops. That was good enough. It's good enough for the Huskies.
No.
No.
But bottom line, the Huskies have now won 6 games that are one-score games this year. I think they've played down to too many opponents, which is something that is also a disease out in Georgia. They play down to their opponent, and you cannot play down against Oregon. Were they just thinking about Oregon? Was that on their heads? I don't know. But the Huskies themselves don't seem to want to thump opponents. And they have the talent to thump anybody. But these Washington State Cougars, those Cougars stand tall every year against the Huskies, no matter whether it's in Seattle or in Pullman. You are in for a war when it comes to the Apple Cup, which has got extended for 5 years. So good for the Cougars to keep that happening. But again, the Huskies, they don't pound opponents when they have the opportunity to do so. And they've only risen up at those moments in the fourth quarter, right? That's a dangerous team. But I want to see more out of that team from the start of a game. I want them to start these games off like that.
Yeah, I feel like when it comes to majority of the quarterbacks in this kind of draft class, Drake May and Michael Penix Jr. have both had that one moment in the season where something either went really right or really wrong for them, and they haven't been able to recover since. The Drake May was the Virginia game. The Penix game, it was either the Arizona State game or the Oregon game. He either played so good against Oregon that he's been trying to force it ever since, and it's been hurting him, or he played so awfully against the Sun Devils that he's been trying to figure it out since. Regardless of what it is, it hasn't been effective for whatever he's doing. That's a major concern, and that's why Oregon is a 7.5-point favorite in the Pac-12 championship game, even though Washington beat them earlier this season, because purely of the play of Michael Penix Jr. There are some major deficiencies with this Washington team, major deficiencies with their defense, major deficiencies with their offensive line, and major deficiencies with their pass game whenever they can't get the ball going early. Washington State is a tough out in the Apple Cup, but they're not that good of a football team. I'm sorry, they're not. And they should have not been remotely close in this game anyway, especially the fact that it was in Seattle. And guess what? Cam Ward, in 2 straight years, put together 2 performances that should have beat Washington, and he was unsuccessful both times due to exterior factors. Washington has been lucky on both those occasions, and hey, good for you. But that luck is going to run out sometime. It's going to run out next week, or it's going to run out in the college football playoff. They need to make some major adjustments because this has not been a team that's performing to championship quality. Yes, Roma Odunze has been a phenomenal athlete for them, a phenomenal player for them. Jalen Polk as well, and even the running back, I think Jackson is his last name, has had his moments, especially in the USC game. However, the fact that McMillan has been playing poor for the past 6 or 7 weeks, the fact that Michael Penix can't even throw for over 200 yards anymore in a game, the fact that they're getting major pressure on him, they can't get any push on that defensive line of their opponents, and the fact that their opponents, especially in the secondary, are giving up big plays, that's not the hallmark of a championship team. And if this team that we've been seeing for the past 5 to 6 weeks shows up in Las Vegas against Oregon, they're not only going to lose, they're going to get blown out. This Washington State team has a coaching staff that is awful. They have a defense that is not that good. They have a wide receiving core that is average at best. but makes really critical mistakes in critical situations. And yet they only were able to win by 3 at home on senior night against your arch rival in the final Pac-12 edition of this. Come on. There's so much wrong that doesn't need to be wrong. And that's why the Huskies, in my opinion, are dropping. And they might end up being out of the college football playoff ranking at the top 4 this week because of such a horrific performance.
Always rely on you to bring a shot. Yeah. You know, Washington is such a hard team to pin down. There's weeks they look dominant. There's weeks they look phenomenal. I mean, if you want to compare some of their matchups, Oregon, phenomenal performance. Phenomenal, right? You turn around and you don't have to go to this matchup. Go to the week before and go, this is a playoff team?
Yep.
Right? So it's very, very worrisome because you're not looking at a team that, like Florida State, that lost their quarterback. You're not looking at a team that's riddled with injuries on the left side of the offensive line. Look at a team that's virtually intact, right? That's been virtually inconsistent all season long, but they still keep winning. So because of the virtue of them winning, they're still in the playoff. If they win next week, they're in the playoff. I don't see them holding out an undefeated Washington. However, does this team match up against Georgia? No. Does this team match up against Michigan? Possibly. Because Michigan, we've seen go into the playoffs and all of a sudden become a different team. So, you know, do they match up against the one-loss Bama? I don't know. Because Bama now, if they can play Bama early in the season, yeah, I would give it to them. But Bama's figured it out. I don't know if they beat Bama. Do they go in and beat a one-loss Ohio State? Maybe. Ohio State's offense has been hit or miss. I'll be honest with you. I don't see. I'm glad Ohio State lost yesterday. And I'm not saying that because I don't like Ohio State. I can care less about Ohio State or Michigan. I've never been a fan of either. So I think both teams are very good. I think they gave us the matchup we were looking for yesterday, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But if you look at it, Ohio State's been compromised at quarterback all season long. There's ways to beat Ohio State based on their quarterback. So Washington can't force McCord into a mistake. So if you look at that, would be a matchup in the playoff. That's a matchup they come out on top of because of the deficiency of Ohio State at quarterback. I don't think they have an answer for a Marvin Harrison, but they have an answer for a Kyle McCord. So, but yeah, I think this team, if they get into the playoff with the right matchup, they can advance. But they won't win the title because eventually you're probably going to run into Georgia. And Georgia's not, you're not on the level of Georgia. I'm sorry. They're just not on. And Georgia doesn't have the greatest quarterback. Okay? The kid is playing well, but he's not what we've seen in the past in Georgia. And not to say Stetson Bennett was a high bar. Stetson Bennett played very well for 2 seasons at Georgia.
Yeah.
Okay? He is not playing anywhere near as well as Stetson Bennett played the last 2 seasons. So they wouldn't beat Georgia. They don't have the matchup on that offensive line. Boy, oh boy, that defensive line for Georgia, way better than what Washington has seen all season long. So they're not a matchup for Georgia. They're not a matchup for Michigan, although, like I said, Michigan has been known to throw that clunker in the playoffs. Last year was a prime example. Boy, oh boy, to go out there and blow that one to TCU. Okay, so or the year before when they faced Georgia and got dismantled, with their number 1 draft pick. So Michigan in the playoffs has been known to throw some clunkers out there that don't match their regular season performance. But do they do that against Washington? I don't think so. I think they're outclass Washington in the playoffs. I think this Washington team has a problem. They didn't get a consistency problem, a matchup problem, and that's going to be their issue if they get into the play.
Yeah, just to add real quick, just take a shot at Michigan. They not only have they been awful in the playoff era, they've been awful in the postseason since like the dawn of time. Bo Schembechler, who depending on what he did in his personal life, might be looking up at us right now. Was like 2-9 in the Rose Bowl. I think he covered once as a favorite. He has 9 losses in the 9 Rose Bowl losses, and no one talks about that. Or the fact that
I do.
Yeah. Or how about the fact that Braylon Edwards one time caught 3 touchdowns and still lost to Texas? Or that Desmond Howard won the Heisman and lost to Washington in the Rose Bowl. I think Darren Muller has 1 Rose Bowl. Lloyd Carr has 1 Rose Bowl to go along with his 97 national championship. And that's like it. So I get your Michigan argument. But I do want to add that, in my opinion, Washington, if they can't get their passing game in check, the only way that they will have a shot is if Michael Penix makes plays on the ground. Except he's injury prone. So what do you even scheme up at this point? I would like to add one more thing, especially since Jeff Barnes is our offensive coordinator in residency here at Team NBS Media. Georgia's Mike Bobo and I believe Washington's Ryan Grubb is the name, are awful offensive coordinators. And they are only products of the fact that they have really good head coaches, a defense, and also, they have really good players. Like, Mike Bobo is terrible, and I don't know how he keeps getting jobs. He's like Will Muschamp, but like genuinely terrible. And then Grubb has I've been hearing Grubb fans win by 35 and still call for his job. So not only do they have problems on the field offensively, the guy that's designing everything is not living up to standard as well. That's even more pressure on Kalen DeBoer to try and figure this out. And what is there to figure out? Like, if y'all don't get pressure on Bo Nix this week, you're not going to the college football playoff. So, for as much great things as Washington has done this season, there's like 5 or 6 games you can point to and be like, hey, that's highly questionable. And now it's all kind of accumulating into what could be a potential failure.
You know he's on the West Coast because he went full gangster this week. I'm telling you, Brock. He went full gangster. What else is there to say about it? Great.
I mean, are you guys gonna tell me that I'm wrong? You gonna tell me that? Yeah, exactly. Like Stetson did his job because he had a competent offensive mind behind him in Todd Monken. Like, I think Carson Beck could be a 300-yard average thrower if he didn't have Mike, I'm gonna run the ball on first and second down like a Marty Schottenheimer, Bobo, calling plays. These deficiencies always reveal themselves, and this is the week where I think they're going to come true for both Georgia and for Washington.
Greg, get your final touches before we move on to the Iron Bowl. You hear me, Greg?
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Get your final thoughts before we move on to the Iron Bowl.
Well, I agree with what Brock said. I mean, but this happens with every college program. Every single program out there. These guys who are the defensive coordinators and offensive coordinators and all this other garbage that you hear about these guys, all of them have a deficiency.
True, but they're
deficient. They're deficient because they all have an ego. Their egos stop them from calling the right plays for their guys that they actually have on the field. That's the deficiency, and that's what these players have to get over. The players are out there being told to do this and do that by somebody who is not capable of doing what these kids do athletically. That's why they're on the sidelines. That's why they're coaching, right? They're no longer able to play the game. These young men who go out there are put into bad positions consistently. And that's the problem.
Yeah, like Washington knows that Penix doesn't have to throw a timing route every single throw. Like, you can set things up for him, right? Like, I'm just saying. Right now, if we took Mike Bobo, Grubb, and Tommy Reese and put them into a room, and we'll have to pick who's the best offensive coordinator right now, Tommy Reese is getting picked. Do you know how, insane that would be to tell you this from 3 months ago? Like, Tommy Reese would be the best offensive coordinator out of those three guys. That I'm just saying, like that just shows to you how the lack of improvement we've seen for these gentlemen over the past 3 months. And if you can't improve, teams are going to catch up because what you've been putting out on film doesn't change. They're going to design a defense to, you know, capitalize on it. So, you
Yep.
know, it, I guess we'll see how long Lady Luck lasts for these gentlemen.
During the 2016 season, when I was offensive coordinator, well, I didn't start the season as offensive coordinator. I was still in the media. The offensive coordinator that took over after I left was the offensive coordinator at the start of that season. He resigned 3 games in. Couldn't handle the stress. I came back after the 3rd game. They had played Hartford early in the season. They blew them out. Offense just moving. We scored 50 plus when I came back. Head coach comes to me and says, "What did you do?" I said, "I didn't do anything. Everything that we called was already here." So how you utilize what you have, right? How you utilize what you have determines how your players are going to play. I had a running back, Lionel Ozzie, who was one of the top rushers at Western Connecticut State when we got him his rookie year. He was top 3 in rushing every year in the league. Okay, Lionel Ozzie was a downhill runner. Okay, when I left, they put him in the spread a lot more and made him run side.
Oh Lord!
When I came back, the first thing we did was line up an eye, and I let him run downhill, and he ran wild. Okay, because that is his element. When you take a downhill runner and make him run sideways, he can be effective, but he's going to be less effective because now he's got to build up into his cut. When you're running downhill, you're running downhill. Okay, did we run spread with Lionel when I was there? Yeah, we still ran spread, but we ran a lot more eye. We ran a lot more single back. In that championship game, when he was the MVP, he ran for over 150 yards. How we did it in the second half? We went pistol. Okay, we went because when we were in spread, they were able to figure them out. We were eye, they packed the box. We went pistol with 2 tight ends and still let him run downhill between the tackles, spread their front, and he went wild. Okay, plain and simple. If you utilize the guys that you have to the best of their ability, not what you want them to do, but the best of their ability, you score points. All right. So moving on, we're running. We got somebody behind us. The NFL show got nobody behind them. They can go over only one. But we have to be on time. So we're going to slide into the Iron Bowl real quick. We're going to talk about Nick Saban's big comeback victory over Hugh Freeze, stopping Hugh Freeze from getting his second victory over him as a head coach. And boy, oh boy, I'll tell you what, if you're a Clemson fan, you have to be sick, right? You're winning this game, and you always find that one mistake to lose it. And lo and behold, it comes on a punt return. The kid slips falling down, and he catches it, hits the ground, and pops out. Goes as a muff punt. It sets up Bama's winning touchdown. Jalen Milroe, 366 total yards. Not a spectacular passing day, pretty good rushing day, but combined effort was phenomenal. Once again, this is the Jalen Milroe you're going to see. This is the Bama offense you're going to see. Him using his combined skills to move this offense. They're a very dangerous team when he does that. Guys, Bama pulls it out, stays in the hunt. They get a nice game next week. As a result, how do you feel about this one?
Bama did what they usually end up doing, and they won another close game. Nick Saban's boys are so well coached that there was no panic amongst them at all. Auburn drops that punt, and it was game over. It was just game over at that point. Even though Auburn had got the sack on Milroe and they forced him back and all this other jazz, how Isaiah Bond was that wide open in the end zone is just ridiculous. Because you only rush 2 guys. So you've got 9 guys defending people, and Bond is wide open in the corner. Like, that was just bizarre. But Saban always has his guys ready to go. And they showed up when they needed to. They obviously didn't plan for the fumbled punt, but when it happened, they were on it. And as soon as Alabama recovered that, I said, "This game is over. It's over. They're going to win."
Yeah, I mean, everyone wants to point at the punt, which obviously was a critical point of the game. Alabama still had to throw on 4th and 30 to win the game and converted it. Like, I think we're really downplaying that portion of the game. What Auburn did defensively to only rush 2 was a crime in itself because it felt like they were playing not to lose instead of playing to win.
Yeah.
Allowing Isaiah Bond to have a one-on-one matchup in the end zone was cardinal sin number 2. Cardinal sin number 3 was, what the hell was that at the end of the game? Like, I get like the last play because of the fumble and everything, but just in general, that whole sequence was just mind-boggling. And good job for Terrion Arnold, who got a cheap pick 6 to add to his stat book on an incredible year that he's having so far. This game was the Hugh Freeze special because for whatever reason, Hugh Freeze always figures it out against Nick Saban. He made Peyton Thorne look like he was prime McVick, and it was the most infuriating thing I've ever seen in my life. It calls the question, is Alabama's defense okay? Because they put in like great performances for 6 weeks, and then they'll just throw a dud in there just randomly. This is how I felt. Like, Peyton Thorne could not throw the ball at all yesterday, except into wide open receivers' hands, into the hands of wide open receivers. So what did they do? They just ran the read option for the whole game, and it worked tremendously well with a backup running back as well. Has Alabama lost its touch, or is it just a case of the Jordan Hare Blues? I don't really know, but I have some major concerns on Alabama. If they even make it to the playoffs, do they still have the defense to get them through? I would, before this game, I would have said absolutely. After this game, I don't really know anymore.
No, this is just a typical Iron Bowl game in Auburn. When Alabama has to travel to Auburn, it is like Tennessee going to Gainesville. It is always going to be a war. And those kids from Auburn stood up and they went to battle. If you have never experienced Alabama Auburn, you saw it yesterday. Auburn is always the underdog, always. Yet they came out and they operated efficiently. I'm not worried about Alabama's defense because Alabama's defense has stood to LSU, Ole Miss, and all these other teams already. But when you go down and you go to those plains and the War Eagle chant and all of that stuff that's there, it is a war. Bottom line. And Auburn was ready for the battle.
It's Peyton Thorne, bro.
It doesn't matter.
Before I would say that before if it was Stidham or Nix or Newton or who was the other guy that was there before Stidham?
It doesn't matter who's playing quarterback. The quarterback position is just a position on the field.
My brother he had a quarterback that couldn't throw.
You don't need to throw the football to win games, Brock. You don't need to
This
throw.
ain't 1912. This ain't when Newt Rockney came to the United States for the first time. This is 2023. You need to throw the football to win, and they didn't. Like, come on, Greg. They put in Robbie Ashford and still had success.
He brought his gangster, this boy.
I'm sorry. If you can run a variation of the same play and have success, Air Force would be the national champion every year. Like, that was disturbingly awful. and you know it.
It doesn't matter, though. It does not matter. This is Alabama versus Auburn. Auburn.
It's Peyton Thorne. It's
It
Peyton
doesn't matter
Thorne.
who the quarterback is. It does not matter.
It does matter. It does.
No, because the War Eagle rises. They come ready to fight.
The War Eagle could rise in my bedroom, and it still would not lift me to playing at a championship level at the quarterback position. Okay.
You don't need but this is what I'm trying to get through to you, Brock.
The only difference between me and Peyton Thorne is that his father is a little bit more genetically inclined to be an athlete than mine. That's the only
We'll discuss a little more when we get to Michigan and Ohio State. We'll discuss what the ground game actually means as well. But okay.
The only difference between Peyton Thorne and Noah Kim is their ethnicity.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Oh man, forget first thing, man. This is way more entertaining. This is at least genuine. This is fun. All right. Man. Oh. Once again, make sure you like it and subscribe, folks. Right. We have one more week of the last word for this season. And man, oh man, this is a fun episode. I can't tell you how much fun we're having right now. And we got one more matchup to discuss. But yes, I'm gonna say this. Yeah, all right. I think I got all the laughter out of me by now. Bama has found a way. Listen, I thought they were going down. I really did. And then I saw it, like I said, Auburn always gives them that one mistake, right? So they gave it to them. I knew it was over at that point. I even cut the TV off. I knew it was over. I didn't wait for the final gun. I knew it was done. So going into this game versus Georgia, do they have the ammunition to beat Georgia? I know they can match up with Georgia, but can they beat Georgia? Because what I saw yesterday was I saw a team that if you have the right formula, you can knock off Bama, even with the way they're playing right. Georgia has that formula. So the question is, do they match up enough to beat Georgia next week? Because right now, Bama they're hot. If you were to think about it, they've been on this roll. But yesterday they were very vulnerable to a team that should not have lost.
Exactly. And again, this goes to Tommy Rees now. Tommy Rees called a horrible game against the Alabama Tigers. I'm sorry to tell you.
Who?
Yeah. Tommy Rees.
Yeah.
The Alabama Tigers. Oh, we might have the whole state come after us with death threats and pitchforks after this. Gee, holy crap.
Man. Listen. We've listen, you're a Notre Dame guy. You've seen Tommy Rees long enough to know that, people have even, toilet papering his house for years.
Yeah.
On the performances he's called. He got away with one. Right? He got away with one. But again, he has a special player at quarterback that's able to make up for his deficiencies, and it's done that over the street. Can that be enough to beat Georgia? Because Georgia got special players on defense. So you're not going to out.
But you know what Georgia hasn't? You know what Georgia hasn't done all year? They haven't played anybody. The Georgia Bulldogs have not played anyone. That is the softest schedule outside of the other big school that we're going to talk about next that has had the softest schedule on the planet.
Don't say that, or Georgia fans are going to feel disrespected. See, they're doubting us again. We just got to quiet. We got to quiet the haters. We just got to quiet the doubters.
If you want me to give you some respect, Georgia, you got my respect because you got the 2 titles already. What you've done this year is what we're talking about, not what you did in the past. This year, and they have played absolutely nobody.
I mean, those 2 titles were handed to them. I don't want to use the words earned, but go off. You know I'm right. You guys, I'm sorry. If your defense has to go against Ajayi Hall and lose, you don't have a good defense. I'm just saying. It's like wait, hold on.
We're just gonna play this when you come in the show. We're just gonna play that from now on when you come in the show. That's gonna be a new thing. Okay.
I'm just saying, is Ajayi Hall even in college anymore? Like, is he even playing?
I don't believe so.
I don't think so either.
Yeah, I haven't heard that name all year.
Yeah, I haven't heard that name since the national championship game.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
So,
I'm just saying.
Speaking of moving on, it's the matchup everybody's been waiting for, and we still got the statement after this. So we're going to dig into this, and then we're going to get into the statement because we have to get moving the chains right behind us. So, Michigan, once again, tops Ohio State for the 3rd straight year. And oh my goodness, I'd hate to be Ryan Day this morning because he is the brunt of all the problems. But once again, I got a bigger villain in Ohio State than Ryan Day. So we're going to let you guys talk about this first because, man, oh man, I got something for you at that.
Where was this mistake by Kyle McCord when they played Notre Dame? Damn it.
Well, see, the difference in that game is that they didn't need McCord to really step up because Notre Dame sucks in general. So they just needed to manage the game until Notre Dame made a mistake, which they did by not having 11 men on the field for 2 consecutive plays.
Yes. And that was the bottom line. But when McCord messed up, I went, this game's over. This game's over. Even though Ohio State played well.
Which time are you referring to?
Oh, right in the first quarter. Right. I mean, you give Michigan that short of a field, it's 7 points, bottom line. And as soon as the Wolverines got on the board that early, you're done. You are done because their defense is solid. Marvin Harrison Jr. can catch whatever McCord threw his way. It wasn't going to be enough. Egbuka wasn't going to catch enough balls. The game ended on that turnover. It was over.
That's fair.
Brock, you got anything else to add? You have any more gangster to unleash before we get to me?
Yeah, I mean, I hope Ryan Day's family is going to be able to get used to the climate of Pullman, Washington, because there ain't no chance in hell that he's surviving Columbus after this year if they don't sneak into the college football playoff. I mean, what can you really say except the reason why Ohio State lost is because they couldn't do the little things, right? And I know that every football player who has ever played the game, at least for like 1 year, has heard the term "the little things" over and over and over again. But it's true. If you don't do the little things correctly, you will never be able to accomplish the big things. It's you get damned in the details. And that's exactly what happened. On the pick six, that ball should have never been thrown. And it should have, because Johnson read it perfectly. The reason Harrison gave up is because there was literally no option for him to go on a screen pass. And then boom, get turnover, 7 points the other way. You had so many other things that went on in that game. The missed field goal at the end of the first half. Obviously, the end of game sequence, allowing Michigan to run out so much clock. I think they got the ball with like 7 minutes left. Ohio State got the ball with like less than 90 seconds. Like, allowing that to happen is not good. Not replacing Jim Knowles in the offseason wasn't good. Not bringing in an actual offensive coordinator and just promoting Brian Hartline was not a smart decision, right? Because Hartline was a good as like a co-offensive coordinator, but it's clear that either you don't trust him or he isn't ready yet because you're still calling the plays, which has not been effective. You already had a guy like CJ Stroud leave your program, go to a league that is substantially harder than what you play at, and have tremendous success from the jump. Why did he have that success with you? There's some major questions that need to be answered. And everyone was pointing to, oh, this is the year because no more Connor Stallions, no more Spygate, no Jim Harbaugh, blah, 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 blah. You had a first-time head coach in Moore, who he had practiced at the beginning of the season. He got put into a position where he beat Penn State, he beat Maryland, and now he beat you? What point? Like, why are you still employed if you can't even be a coach? It's not even the actual coach. Major questions need to be had. I thought Moore made a bad decision when he decided to kick the field goal at the end of the game to go up by 6 instead of trying to put the ball into his quarterback's hand, who was hot, by the way, that day, and try and win the game right then. And guess what? It didn't come back to bite him because your team could not get it done. JJ McCarthy looked awful these past couple of weeks. Like Penix, like May. And guess what happens? Against you, he looked like he was like Jesus Christ on a football field. He made every throw, he made every play, he made every correct decision, and yet your team still had a position, was still in a position to win on your side of the ball, and he still couldn't get it done for 3 straight years. You gotta go. That's how I see it. You gotta go.
Could you imagine, Jeff, if Brock's social media mind was around when Bo and Woody were still kicking? I mean, he would have had Bo Schembechler fired, and Woody would have been long gone as well.
Honestly, Bo Schembechler. No. Let's talk about it. Bo Schembechler is the most overrated coach of all time.
Well, yes, but that's besides the point. And Joe's not here for me to beat on about that. But okay. And
Woody Hayes' greatest hit was a 19-year-old.
Well, that's it was a different era. But my whole bottom line with this thing is we got to stop this firing of a coach every loss.
No, we don't.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. You need stability. Stability.
What stability? To lose to the biggest rival every year? That's the stability? Urban Meyer went 7-0 against Michigan. Ryan Day's 1-3. I don't know.
Harbaugh was 2-5 against Ohio State, yet he still had his job.
Do you know why? He cheated. That's why.
Well, yes.
Do you think he got divine inspiration from God? Do you think he went up to the mountains and said, Lord, give me the secrets? No, he cheated. That's why he got turned around. Like,
he also built a program, and that program is solid as a rock. That's the bottom line. That's why Michigan is where they are every single year. They are a well-built program.
What?
Bottom line.
No, they aren't. No, they aren't.
Yes, they are.
First of all, name one outside of Ohio State team that's poorly coached. What other significant victories does Michigan have in these past couple years?
Again, because of the way that they schedule their games, they don't play anybody. That's the bottom line. It's just like Georgia this year.
Play Georgia, they got blown out. Play TCU, they lost.
I'm going to jump in because I'm going to on time right now. We're right, but I'm going to jump in real quick because I'm getting my.
They let Peyton Thorne beat him.
I'm going to jump in real quick on this one. All right. So, to me, the bigger villain isn't Ryan Day, right? The bigger villain is the guy you brought in to lead this defense, right? Jim Knowles. What the hell, dude? Right? Last year, you were stubborn. You stayed in zero coverage, and they ate you alive vertically. Okay? Then they gashed you with the run because when they broke that front 8 that you put up there was nothing behind it to make a tackle to stop a running back from going 60, 70 yards. You were stubborn last year. This year, you're playing against a less efficient Michigan offense without Harbaugh. Because when Harbaugh was coaching this team, they were lighting it up. Okay? When Harbaugh went out this last time, their interim coordinator said, the interim coach said, we're going to slow this game down and take it slow and be conservative, and we're going to win that. And guess what? You gave up. You scored. You pulled within 3, and you allowed them to eat over 6 minutes of clock on you. Okay, so now you can't. You've held Blake Corum in check. He only had 88 yards rushing. But you still couldn't stop the running game. You couldn't get J.J. McCarthy off the field. Jim Knowles, you were supposed to be the missing piece to guide this defense to match this offense. It hasn't happened. Okay, your defense is good, but it's not clutch. It doesn't make clutch plays. Okay, no. It didn't make clutch plays against Notre Dame. All right, if it wasn't for the fact that Notre Dame made their mistakes, you lose that game. Okay, right now you have to look at this defense with Ohio State and go, are we really championship material? Because this defense doesn't help us make a championship play. The offense will do it with Harrison. Guess what? You're going to have him next year. He's going to be gone. Abuka could do it for you. You're going to have him next year. He's probably gone. So right now, you're going to look at Kyle McCord. Oh, by the way, Trevion Henderson, he's out too. All right. So right now, you're looking at next year, Kyle McCord is going to be your top offensive talent, barring some young wide receiver coming in and lighting it up. And you're going to have to rely on this defense to lead you to a national championship and possibly try and beat Michigan in next year. Good luck. Okay. I'm sorry. I've seen enough out of him. Okay. He is not, he can't get this defense. Bend but don't break defense, he can do. An aggressive defense, he can do. This defense is going to win you a championship and make a play for you to help save your offense. Good luck.
He cannot do it.
No, he can't, because that's the reason why Georgia was able to score so many points in the second half last year. What he's doing, Jack Sawyer, reminds me a lot when the Packers tried to move Aaron Catman from DN to outside linebacker. Do you know how stupid Catman looked dropping into coverage? I'm gonna tell you exactly how stupid he looked. Ridiculous. He looked like he didn't know what he was doing. That man never took a back step in his life until he was in the NFL. Some players aren't meant to do these things. Jack Sawyer ain't meant to do what Knowles is asking of him. This defense isn't meant to do what they're asking of them. And they have playmakers on this defense. Sawyer, JTT, Eichenberg, you got Denzel Burke. Do you think this defense was good enough to beat Michigan?
You're going to have Eichenberg next year. There won't be any Eichenberg next year. No.
No JTT, no Sawyer, no Burke. All those guys are gone.
Yeah. So good luck again when we talk about it. And speaking of good luck, it's time to move on to moving the chains because we are officially overtime. We got to go. So next, we'll have our final statement of the season next week as we do our final show for the last word. As the last weekend of college football, we'll be here next week, folks. So one more episode for the season. Everybody, thanks for watching. We'll be back next week for Brock, for Greg, for Joe, who's not with us this week. Thanks for watching. It's been an amazing season so far. See you next week for our season finale.